Hi there weavers, today I just want to share a few of my thoughts with you on choosing a floor loom. Now for most of us, choosing a floor loom is going to be a pretty big decision in a lot of regards, because first we have the investment. If you're buying a brand new floor loom, it's going to be quite an investment, and even if you're buying one secondhand, it still could be quite a large outlay. Then we have to think about, where are we going to put this floor loom? You have to really consider the size for the space that you have. You have to think about what you're going to actually be using the floor loom for, how many shafts you're going to want, what type of loom. Okay, yeah, there is just so much to think about. But there are a couple of things that I want to just narrow down today, just to simplify and, get you thinking along those lines if you are thinking about a floor loom, about a couple of things that I think are super duper important. And these points that I want to make relate to your body and your expectations, and whether your expectations are realistic or not. Let me give you an example. When I started to think about getting my first floor loom, which was absolutely my heart's desire, I'd been weaving on a rigid heddle loom. It was going great. I really enjoyed it. But oh boy, I saw those floor looms and I was just gone. I felt that I just had to have one. But here was my issue. I had a really bad back at that time. I was seeing a chiropractor twice a week just to try and get through each day without too much pain and without having to lie down. And as much as I wanted a floor loom, I thought maybe it just would not be the right decision for me, because I need to use my whole body to operate a floor loom. And at the moment, I can't even go grocery shopping. So I came up with a compromise, and that was to get my first table loom. That turned out to be a brilliant decision for me, because I was able to learn all about multi-shaft weaving, and it had a minimal impact on my body. It actually suited my back really well. I found that I could sit with the table loom on a table, and I could use a height adjustable chair, and I could be quite comfortable weaving for quite a long time. Now let's fast forward a few years down the track, and my back had, thanks be to God, drastically improved to the point where I was able to do all kinds of things physically. So naturally my mind, my little weaver's mind, turned back to the thoughts of my dream floor loom. Now, even though I was in a good space with my back at this time, I still wanted to make sure that I was physically going to be able to use this loom. I was looking at getting a brand new loom. It was a huge amount of money for us at the time, as we were on a single income, and my husband wasn't making all that much. So I had to be really careful and strategic about it. So here are the things that I looked for to help ensure that weaving on this loom was not going to give me major flare-ups with my back problems that already existed. The first thing I looked for was a loom with light treadling. What do I mean by that? I mean, when you press down on a treadle, it's not so heavy that you have to apply a huge amount of pressure. The second thing I looked for was a loom that was not too big. Now this was for a couple of reasons. I wanted it to be manageable for my body, but also I wanted to be able to fit it within a very small creative space that I had at the time. And then thirdly, I wanted a weaving width that was wide enough to do something, say, as large as a baby blanket, but not so wide that I would have to be leaning and moving too much at the loom, because the weaving width was so wide that I had to have a long reach. And there was one more thing that I thought would really help me with my back, and it may be the opposite for you, it just depends on your situation. But the loom that I was looking at the time had a rattle on top of the loom, which meant that I could stand to arrange my threads in the rattle. Now, standing at the time was better for me than, say trying to sit somewhere and lean to place threads in a rattle. So that really appealed to me as well. Okay, so I've talked about the physical aspects, but I want to mention one other thing when you're looking at a loom. Think about and be realistic about your age. Okay, we all want to be able to do what we want to do until we die. We want to be fit, we want to be active, we want our bodies to obey our every wish and command. But the reality is that they often just don't do that. And the reality is that as we get older, our bodies naturally deteriorate. That's a normal thing. So last year when I bought my second floor loom, I did buy a really large loom, and it is a bit heavier in the treadling, and it is a wider reach for me, and it is harder on my body to use that loom. Now, as far as my age is concerned, I'm almost 48, so I was confident enough buying a larger loom that I'll be okay for a few years to come to use that loom if I use it sensibly. Like, I don't sit and weave on it all day long every day, because I just know that my back would not let me do that. But I do think that I should be okay on that loom for a few years to come. Now, let's say that I was, I don't know, already in my 60s, maybe I was 65, and I wanted to buy a floor loom for the first time. I'd be thinking very carefully about that and about the impact on my body. Now, I'm a huge advocate for weavers, and I always say, if you want to weave, you can do it. But sometimes you're not going to be able to weave in the same way that another person can weave. You, as a maybe 65-year-old, don't have the body of a 25-year-old, 35-year-old, 45-year-old. And as you progress in years, your body is probably going to change and deteriorate a little bit more. And so it's good to plan for that. That doesn't have to be a negative thing, but it's good to have it as part of your plan so that you don't end up saying, oh, I spent all this money on this beautiful floor loom, and I find in a few years' time that I'm not really able to use it because it's too much strain on my body. So when you're purchasing your floor loom, think about your future self as well as your current self. Now, the great news is that there are wonderful looms like AVL looms, computerized looms, that I know a lot of weavers who are more advanced in years are using successfully, and some weavers will swap over to those looms once they get to a certain age. So that is definitely something for you to consider as well. Now, I want to make a recommendation. Because of my own experience with my back problems and with getting my first floor loom as a first-time floor loom weaver, I'd never even woven on a floor loom before when my first floor loom arrived. I think that this is a fantastic loom to start out with for all of the reasons that I've mentioned in this video, and it is a David by Louet. Now, I bought my David some time ago, so my version is the David 2. But now if you were purchasing, you would be purchasing the David 3. I'm not even sure that the David 2 is available anymore. David 3 is very similar. I think the Beta is a little bit different, but it's still the same design and same basics. So I think this loom is so well set up that just about anybody could weave on it. It is so gentle on your body. It is so comfortable to use. And although I love using my really big floor loom as well, the David is just, I think of it as my kind loom. It's very kind to me. I also think that Louet are a great company. They make really quality looms, and I have no hesitation in recommending one of these if you are looking for your first floor loom. Friends, I hope that me sharing my thoughts today has been helpful to you, given you some direction, given you some things to think about. If you have any questions or comments, leave them for me down below, and I'll be sure to get back to you. Until next time, happy weaving.